Welcome to Wednesday night. Hope all of you are finding yourselves good. Have a few people on, I've noticed. So, welcome to Wednesday. Hope all of you are finding yourselves good. Okay, a little bit of an echo in the room. So, Robert is monitoring the web stream on his phone, and his phone still had the volume up. So we had a little bit of an echo for a short time. We also noticed that the audio, in spite of us trying to fix the noise gate, so to speak, which we disabled after being told that it was bad, noticed that there was quite a bit of a delay for some reason. And so we worked on that a little bit, and hopefully we've fixed the sound versus the video being out of sync. So we noticed that a lot in the video that ended up being published afterwards. So hopefully we've overcome that as well. So I see that we've got several that have joined, David and James, and who is Master Dad again? Kentrol. Okay, Kentrol, good. Caitlin, Brandon, Adam, James again. Yep, good evening, he said earlier. Tyler, Dan, KC Robinson is here, and Irene. Very good, very good. Well, first I'll open it up to all that are here at this point while we wait for others, if there are any questions, especially concerning the grading, because I know I was going by the rules on the posting for the gosh, why am I tang-tungled today? I was going by the rules concerning the posting for the articles, and a lot of you posted a bit late, and then quite a few of you only responded to 2 other students when there was supposed to be 4. So the grades were lower than usual for the average, I'd have to say. So I hope that if I can answer any questions here to make sure that we're in sync with what the requirements are, that would be good. So the requirements are is to post by Wednesday and then read other people's posts and respond to those posts by respond to 4 of those posts before the end of the Sunday. So that's in general what is expected there. It's meant to be a chance to discuss among the students the various topics, because everybody's going to be at a different place. Some people are going to be experts at cryptocurrency investing, kind of got an indication a little bit of that. Some are going to be, a little bit more familiar with blockchain and where it can be used in business. So everybody will post stuff that's at their own level. So it's always good to be able to read others and see where they're at and help others when they've got some confusion about the different things. One of the articles that was posted is on my screen right now. Please, if there's any questions, please post them in the chat. I'll try to keep track of it as I look at my window over here, as I look at my monitor over here, so to my left. Okay, so let's talk about the first article then, because the first article, literally, I always love these blockchain trends. A lot of different companies, different publishers, different bloggers will put out different views on what the trends are, and some of them are actually quite funny. Other ones are, they show their ignorance of what the topic really is. And they call blockchain trends, and they talk about cryptocurrencies all the way through it. And, while cryptocurrencies use blockchain, the real impact of blockchain is going to be in the business world. We know that there's some challenges in the crypto world, and we'll talk a bit about that today because we've got a good variety of topics. So I don't know that I agree that blockchain is expected to take over the business world in 2023. I would agree that it's becoming a kind of a front and center topic, in a lot of the boardrooms within corporate America. So it's definitely a hot topic. I don't think that everybody's going to be running a blockchain by the end of the year, but we'll see how many companies do adopt. And frankly, I do post a lot of companies, information about companies that have adopted. If you look at the channel that I point you to for my lectures, you'll see a lot of other examples that I've live streamed for prior classes. And so when I come across a good one, we chop it up and make a smaller video of it and edit it down so that to get the ums and ahs and the big pauses out of it, so it's a little bit easier to watch. So we look at the blockchain trends here, and I really, is it still relevant? The answer is yes to there, and that's what they say is yes here. So they're saying, according to the Business Research Company, that it's 2023 is going to be a staggering 19.76 billion by 1927, and currently 4.7 billion in this year. So it definitely is growing. Do understand that companies, when they start putting together their own software packages, like for example, I was putting together a forecasting tool for Boeing, and before we implemented it fully, we had spent $16.4 million building that software package and testing it and getting it deployed. So it's easy for large corporations to spend quite a lot of money. And so this number, to me, isn't staggering. 4.7 billion would be 6 or 7 major companies implementing a blockchain, and they could gobble up that much money pretty quick. So staggering 19.76, I just wouldn't call it staggering. I would say that's a fairly modest growth by 4 years from now. And we don't know what inflation's going to do with the cost of labor within companies also. So the first one they call value chains, and then they use the correct terminology for it, and that's supply chain. Value chain was the terminology they started using for supply chains because their supply chains help them to build value into a product. They buy parts and so forth and put it into their final product and build value out of it. So, some MBA course somewhere along the line decided to call them value chains, and the term kind of stuck. But really, they're your suppliers, and really putting this at number one is absolutely correct. That it's being used for more supply chain projects than it is any other type of project. And frankly, international trade. We did see TradeLens shutting down earlier this year, but TradeLens was a blockchain that they had implemented for international cargo transport over the waters, over the oceans. So a lot of the large containerized shipping companies used this TradeLens blockchain until it shut down. And part of the reason it shut down is it had a really good boost during COVID when people all of a sudden were buying stuff and having it shipped to their homes instead of going to local stores, because local stores tend to manage their supply chains different than individuals buying through Amazon. So the containerized shipping became a big deal during COVID, and then when business went way down, there wasn't enough going through the blockchain to support it financially. But international trade, you'll find, has been boosted by international financing that's become part of blockchain technology as well. Decentralized finance and banking. We'll talk a little bit about the challenges that decentralized finance and banking have in a future section. But that is very important. Now, there's going to be a huge challenge with countries that don't like blockchain. Most of the international organizations like the World Economic Forum and the World Bank, what was the one I mentioned last week? I lost it.
I don't recall.
and we're going to talk about that one in a future week. But anyway, those large major organizations basically want to outlaw cryptocurrencies in favor of countrywide CBDCs. Now, we'll talk a little bit about CBDCs a little bit later, but the whole point is decentralized finance flies in the face of current monetary policy in many countries, including the United States. So here you've got a situation where DeFi is probably for you and me very, very beneficial. It has its bumps in the road. There's a lot of fraud that occurs there. The protocols are not as secure as they need to be. They're not as secure as our current banking system is the problem. And that's going to cause issues for decentralized banking to go forward in the future. Cryptocurrencies and online payment systems, we know Bitcoin is flying strong. It's continuing to go strong in spite of the fact that it's by far the oldest and probably the slowest blockchain out there for managing cryptocurrencies. And that's kind of unfortunate that it's slow, but their slowness also creates a lot of their security. So proof of work works to secure the blockchain. And you haven't heard of any Bitcoin hacks into their code. Now you've seen hacks of people getting their private keys stolen and money stolen that way, but you haven't seen a protocol problem in the Bitcoin space at all. So cryptocurrencies and online payment systems are very, very strong. Increased adoption of blockchain by enterprises, amen to that. There's a lot of examples of a lot of those, and like I say, we'll go over a lot of those before the class is over. Development of blockchain-based applications. Yes, we're seeing blockchain applications in the gaming space. They're a little bit immature at this point as far as I'm concerned. They're at this point not very fun to play, and frankly it takes too much to set them up and point them to your wallet and figure out what their token issues are and so forth. And then the graphics tend to be clunky, like they were invented 10, 15 years ago. So at this point there are some blockchain applications that are going quite well, especially in the security space and especially in the know your customer features that they're talking about here as in identification spaces. So does blockchain have a future? Yeah, it definitely does. Blockchain as a technology is very, very strong. It's getting stronger every day. The major players in it, IBM, Oracle, and other companies that are lesser known because they focus just on blockchain and they haven't done things in other areas like these other big companies have. They're all vying for their piece of that, $14.7 billion pie that we talked about earlier when it talked about companies deploying blockchains. So it's very strong. That's the reason for this class, so you can get familiar with it, and so that we can, know what's happening down the road, and hopefully provide viable employment for everybody that's on the phone here. So Charnel is here. Good, very good. Okay, so that's the end of this topic. Do we have any questions at all? Because I'm not seeing any here, and if there are questions, please.
I'd like to make a comment while we're waiting for any questions that might come in.
Okay.
One of the issues when it comes to blockchain games and a lot of those applications is there's just poor incentives when it comes to playing those games. The people who play the games, the people who want to jump in early and make a bunch of money selling off what they get early to other players. If you're looking for a more advanced issue here, or a more advanced platform that has the same issue, there's a platform called, I think it's called DTube, a video streaming YouTube Twitch alternative that's been on the Steam cryptocurrency for quite a while now. It's 5 years or so. It's been out for quite a while, but it's never really caught on, never really got anywhere. Why? Because they have so many creators out there who want to make money, and they jump on the service. There's more people streaming than there are watching most of the time, right? Because everyone wants to be there to produce, to make money on it. So the incentive structure just isn't there. Like on most games you buy a game to play a game and have fun. Instead, we have people who play the game to make money, right? And that the same argument applies to just about any industry that employs blockchain. You have to make sure the incentive structure is there correctly.
Yeah, exactly. In fact, that's one of the things we talk about is the fact that tokenization, because tokenization provides the incentives to produce the blockchain and move forward. And that's why trade funds eventually failed. There was a lot of business going through it when COVID was strong, but when the lockdown stopped and they went kind of below normal because we also went almost straight into the recession. There wasn't enough business to keep the blockchain up and alive.
Yeah.
So, all right. What's my second topic, Robert?
That would be reports on hacks.
Okay. So that is one of my Word documents here. Okay. All right. So, this one was also submitted. Every article I'm talking about today was submitted by one of you students. So these are the ones that tickled my fancy that I thought that we could embellish more and learn more from as a group. So here goes with this one. The hacks, and I want to scroll down here to the most common types of cybersecurity hacks are protocol logic problems. Okay, now a protocol logic problem is when you've got something like a smart contract that actually is an add-on to the blockchain. The smart contract itself has a protocol problem that hackers then exploit in order to grab cryptocurrency or grab more than they deserve or mine an exorbitant number of coins within that particular blockchain. And so as you talk about this year to date up to 14th of April, protocol logic is by far 10 times more than an ecosystem problem with the number of hacks. 11 here, and you can obviously see that the protocol hacks are much more valuable to the hacker because 11 divided into 230 is a whole lot more than 23 divided by 7. So you can see that the type of hacks are predominantly the protocol hacks. Now, as the report goes further on, you see infrastructure and rug pull hacks. Now, a rug pull hack, if you don't understand what that is, a rug pull is when somebody decides to deploy a coin and they promote it really, really high, and they get a whole bunch of people to throw either Bitcoin at it to convert Bitcoin to that new coin or actual dollars, money, whatever, and they sell these coins on an exchange, and then they disappear with the money. That's a rug pull. So they've had 2 of those so far this year, and basically they hype what benefits they're going to do, and they get people to buy into these wonderful benefits. But you've got to really, really beware to look under the hood and see if what they're doing is going to be viable, whether they've really put together a team that has expertise, or whether you've just got 2 owners that probably have done this 2 or 3 times before and carried the money away.
Social media celebrities don't know anything about Bitcoin or blockchain.
Oh, you're talking about Shaq again?
Was Shaq in on one of these?
Shaq was in on the FTX thing.
Oh, that's right. He was. That's right. He got his whole team, team to invest.
In fact, the FTX thing, SBF. What's SBF?
Sam Bankman-Fried.
Sam Bankman-Fried, the guy that was in with all the Democratic lawmakers, donated tons and tons of money to these Democratic fundraisers. They had him in an interview with the coffee guy.
CoffeeZilla?
CoffeeZilla, thank you.
Yeah.
CoffeeZilla is a channel on YouTube, and if you're interested, type in CoffeeZilla Sam Bankman-Fried, and it's a very, very interesting interview because what he describes is you create this box, and this box, it contains all the good things that you're promising everybody to do, and you get people to invest in this, and then once they invest in this in the first 24 hours or so, and it's worth so many millions of dollars, then you advertise that this project is already worth so many millions of dollars. You got to jump in while it's still hot. But he was questioned by the CoffeeZilla guy over and over on, well, what's the content in the box? He says, it doesn't matter what the content is, just the fact that it's worth a lot. And you get people to invest in it because it's worth a lot. And CoffeeZilla, then the guy said to him, he says, you know what you're describing? You're describing fraud that's illegal. Oh, it's okay. It's not illegal.
That's just how things work in the crypto world.
Just how things are done in the crypto world.
Mm-hmm.
Well. He took down a lot of people with him, and now he's got an ankle bracelet on, and he's restricted to house arrest till he gets to defend all of his in his $1 million mansion. Yeah, that's true. Basically he was just collecting money from a lot of people and basically doing a Ponzi scheme. He'd use money to prop up other things and prop up withdrawals until the cryptocurrency started going down in value. Mm-hmm. And we know that going down in value captured a lot of the fraudsters that were out there because they couldn't sustain things once the value started going down. So that's a rug pull, just so that you know. Okay, let's move on here. So here's how much money lost. These 11, they reported 19 protocol losses. This is Q1 of 2023. And so there were 19 total attacks. 11 of them were protocol logic. So they're going to tell you what the predominant ones here. Q1 of 2022 is still protocol logic, and Q1 of 2020 is protocol logic. Somehow in Q1 of 2021, their ecosystem ones were the higher ones, but they were still 10, and there were millions of dollars lost. It was, it's amazing. Now, what do you mean by protocol logic, Rick? Farther down here, I think what it does is it tells, where does it tell what? I thought I saw in here where it told where these attacks mostly occurred. Well, I'm just going to have to tell you that they mostly occur in the Ethereum blockchain. The Ethereum blockchain is a very open blockchain. The whole idea of that blockchain is to create distributed Wi-Fi applications. And of course, it's kind of the wild, wild west. It's all open source. And what happens is a lot of times when there's a hack, a lot of times what happens is they'll share the source of the smart contracts, and the hackers will then pore over the source, find the weakness, and then once it opens up, they'll go exploit the weakness. So open source has its good things, but if you've got all ethical people out there and they're putting in information concerning the code that you're deploying out in the open, then you've got people providing good solid input. Part of the challenge is that they're letting their code out in the wild before they've had adequate chance to test it and bulletproof it and get good test scripts that really test all the edge cases. When we're doing software testing, we talk a lot about edge cases. The edge cases are those that nobody would ever do this. You got to be kidding me, really? Those are the edge cases, because it's those kind of things that the hackers do, that things that other people don't think of. And you need to think of those when you're putting out the testing. So you've got a lot of these distributed Wi-Fi, distributed
finance.
Distributed finance, DeFi, not Wi-Fi.
There we go.
That's funny. Okay, that have crashed and burned, that were legitimate projects, but they lost too much money to continue surviving. Yeah.
One of the big things here is we are generally used to operating in a highly regulated market. all of the food products you go to the store, you never check them for contamination. You don't do your homework anytime you go to Walmart. You just pick up food and you eat it. That's insane, the amount of trust we have in our system that we can take any food out of a store and eat it and have no fear of getting sick. Okay, the same sort of thing. The opposite is what's happening here in this market, where nothing's texted, nothing's regulated. So what do? Well, it's a self-balancing system. The more hacks there are, the less trust there is. The less trust there is, the more we check the system, the more we're more cautious when we try things out. You have to, if you're developing or deploying a DeFi system, build trust with your consumer base over time. Some companies have been fairly good at it by deploying actual bounties for bugs found, setting aside actual real money for finding these sorts of hacks and bugs. And that's the way you
and reporting it instead of exploiting it.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's how you build trust over time in order to be more resilient in this sort of space.
Absolutely. So that's that article. Okay. Keisha was having issues connecting. Thank you for joining. Which platform is the best for crypto trading, according to me? I'll tell you which one I use. I use Coinbase. I've not found the others as friendly as Coinbase. Coinbase also is very, very locked into making sure they stay legal, and they have shied away from things that look like they're getting in the regulatory gray area. And so I personally like Coinbase. For one, it's US based. At least for now it is, until they get some things sorted out with the FCC. They've threatened to leave the country because the FCC is still being fuzzy in their crypto regulatory environment. So, you just can't. One of the biggest downsides of the United States is the fact that we move so slow in regulating things. And really, right now, the crypto space is looking for the regulation to be there so that they can stay in line with that regulation and not all of a sudden get an FCC letter one day that says that you're doing this wrong and you're fined this $1 million. That never works. Not in a trusting space like crypto. So, okay, Caitlin is voting yes on Coinbase. Never had issues with it. You're right, I never had issues. And I made a mistake once. I took coin out and sent it to a wallet to use with Compound. And unbeknownst to me, I didn't understand that there were two variations of Compound. And when you got it to their thing, you converted it to one that was stakeable. The one that came from Coinbase, you couldn't stake, but the one that you had in the wallet was staked, so it would earn interest. Well, I didn't realize it, and I didn't switch it back to the other kind that Coinbase could deal with, and I shipped it back. Well, Coinbase has now developed a protocol where they can look for addresses that had coins that were not accepted, were not supported by Coinbase, and they sent me an email that says, "Hey, we've got this transaction here that was an unsupported coin. We can't tell you what the coin was, but it was not supported in our system. But here's the transaction ID. Here's the coin ID, and if you can." It's from the Ethereum blockchain. It knew that. It was an ERC20 token from the Ethereum blockchain. And they basically told me, here's a form that you can fill out with the two pieces of information that I gave you. And because it was an Ethereum blockchain, I used the Coinbase mobile app, which accepts all ERC tokens, shipped it over there, and I found out it was worth $109. So it, better than a poke in the stick with an eye, Poke in the eye with a stick.
There you got it.
Not too good on my metaphors tonight. But, yeah, Coinbase, I'll stick with them when they do things like that are innovative and help protect me.
I will put a word of warning out there with Coinbase. It is, I think, right now the most popular platform, at least here in the United States. But being the most popular and being so good doesn't mean a whole lot, because if you guys have been in the crypto space for a while, you might remember a place called Mt. Gox, which at one point held like 70% of all Bitcoin, and one day just went poof. if you don't hold the private keys yourself in a cold wallet, it's just like having a bank. If you can't trust the bank, then it's gone. So always be careful. If you're storing a lot of money, store it in a cold wallet privately.
Yeah, especially if you're just going to let it sit.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if you're not actively investing back and forth, you probably want it in a place where it's secure. Very good. Good point. All right, that's all I have on that article, and we got at least one good question there, and a thumbs up for Coinbase. So what's my next topic, Robert?
I think it's time for the memes.
Time for memes. Okay, let's talk about meme coins.
Oh boy.
This one was interesting because it's the first article I've read that was a positive about meme coins on the Bitcoin blockchain. Now, do understand that the Bitcoin blockchain never was ever intended to do anything except be a payment system for Bitcoin cryptocurrency. Never intended. I mean, Ethereum was written from the ground up to be intended to have smart contracts and other types of things going on, and the ERC20 coin was attached to that so that you could do other projects on Ethereum other than just do crypto. But here comes along these NFTs, and for one, I'm not too favorable towards NFTs anyway, and I think Robert expressed that last week in his opinion.
I'll express it again if you give me time.
No, that's not. But now we've got NFTs here. Now, understand that especially when the market went downward from the 60,000 range down into the teens, didn't it go below 10 at one point?
Oh gosh.
Didn't
I think so, yeah.
Yeah.
It was trying to hit 8.
it went down from the way high to way low, really low. Wondering how long it was just going to keep doing that. But anyway, so because the coins values went down, there were a lot of mining farms that went out of business because their expense structure was not such that they were making enough dollars to be able to afford the electricity, the housing, and all the things that went with it. So with less miners, of course, there's the network bogs down and doesn't do what it's supposed to do. In other words, the initial start of Bitcoin was with the idea that it would continue to rise in value, and as blocks were closed, the amount of reward would eventually keep on going in half every so many blocks. And it would go in half because the coin values were higher, and so the reward could be lower and still be about the same dollar amount. Well, when you have it dramatically go from 60 grand down to 8, that creates some problems in the market. So a lot of miners decided to go out of business. Well, here's the silver lining of this story is simply the fact that that miners, the revenue profile of miners, is increasing because the fees that are collected for closing a block, not just the block reward, because they always got fees, and the expectation was that the fees would continue to rise along with the cost of the Bitcoin, so they could have the Bitcoin, it could go, the number of Bitcoins could go in half, but the fees would continue to rise. Well, when they didn't, because the fees went down with the cost of the Bitcoin, they're finding that now with NFTs creating more transactions in the Bitcoin blockchain, the miners have more fees that are collectible each time they close a block. So because of that, it's actually creating a boost for miners, and that is basically the silver lining. Now, hopefully that will attract more miners into the game, because if it attracts more miners into the game because they can see the profit motive, if the miners join the total network, then you've got less transaction time and less fees, because the transactions are more numerous, and you can advance the network forward. So the whole idea of NFTs, I don't like NFTs much, has proved to be a boon for miners, and yay for that, because I don't want Bitcoin to go away. The one thing about Bitcoin is the fact that it's our only alternative to what these central banks are trying to put out against, out to the American public, and we'll talk about that in the next section. So the meme tokens, the NFTs, obviously creating quite a positive effect on the Bitcoin network, as well as a negative effect. But we'll take the good, even though we got to deal with the bad a little bit. But
it always comes down to people playing around. Video games, what pushes the computer industry forward. Unfortunately, meme tokens and coins and NFTs are what's pushing the cryptocurrency forward.
Yeah.
It was just sad. But
Yep. So, any questions about that? That one was rather a short section. By the way, here's the idea that we're talking about here. The mean fee for transaction for the Bitcoin began April at $280 and reached $30 on May 8th. Moderated to $6 by May 18th. In other words, when the meme coins started in Bitcoin, the fees were driven upward. And after the volume caught up with the number of transactions going through, and the blocks being closed and the fees being charged, after a while it moderated back down to $6 per transaction. Frankly, I consider that fairly steep at this point still. But I'm still a low dollar trader. I mean, I'm an educator. I don't make a whole ton of money, but so there it is. Okay. Let's go on to our next topic then.
well, we get to talk about Africa now. We get to talk about CBDCs. The only thing worse in the crypto space than NFTs and all the acronyms.
And all the acronyms?
And all the acronyms.
What do I mean by transaction, Adam asks? A transaction is when you decide to send some Bitcoin to another person. That is the typical transaction on a Bitcoin network. So if I was to want to send a certain value of Bitcoin from my wallet to Robert, to his wallet, that would be a transaction, and I'd need to pay a transaction fee in order to do that. If you're on an exchange like Coinbase or any other exchange where you're actively investing, each time you put your coin in there to be bought or sold, you create a transaction on the blockchain. Now, the transaction can be huge, it can be small, but a transaction is just a transaction to the network. The numbers associated with it, it doesn't care. So the transaction fees are going to be a larger percent of a much smaller transaction than a very large transaction, but a transaction is just a transfer of Bitcoin from a wallet to another. Now, an NFT transaction, on the other hand, would be creating an NFT and sending that NFT to an address on the Bitcoin network. Initially, they've got some mechanism to mine the NFTs. Once the NFTs are created, they're put on the blockchain and then can be transferred from person to person. And each one of those transfers would be considered a transaction. So,
could you describe it in a case of something like TradeLens, some sort of supply chain blockchain? What would a transaction be in that context?
In a supply chain blockchain, let's use Food Trust instead.
Okay.
I can understand Food Trust a little better.
Okay.
Let's say a farmer is on the Food Trust network and they ultimately sell to Walmart, but let's say the first thing they do is they sell to Golden State Foods, and Golden State Foods is their processor. They are also one of the videos I have on my in my channel as a user of the Food Trust blockchain. They then sell to Walmart, which they do, so they're one of the intermediaries. Now, a transaction in that case is when a farmer has a bushel or so and they have a barcode on it, they scan the barcode, and that barcode creates a transaction on whatever blockchain, the Food Trust blockchain that they're on. That transaction is listed with that information on what that bushel of produce is, and the fact that it left the farmer on that day. It tells what kind of transaction it is, as well as what is in the particular bushel. So it gets sent off. Let's say it goes to a trucking company, and that trucking company then receives it. That's a transaction. The trucking company loads it on the truck and delivers it to Golden State Foods, where they get their bill of lading sign that says that they delivered it there. That creates a transaction, and when Golden State Foods receives it, there's another transaction. You can see all these transactions gather information about this one. What should be a coin in Bitcoin would be a token that represented the produce in another blockchain, in a business blockchain. Talking about supply chain. So the transactions are the hashes. Wow, you're opening a big subject there. In the Bitcoin blockchain, the hashes are the problems that the miners solve in order to get the right to close a block. The transactions are not the hashes, although when a block is closed, everything is encrypted in what they call a Merkle tree encryption, to where the top of the Merkle tree represents all the transactions in there, and that top of the Merkle tree is the encrypted ID that belongs to that block, which is then chained to the prior block, where the block then will have the prior block's address and the current block's address, and eventually that address will be sent to the next block as the next link in the chain. So the hashes in particular are not the actual transaction.
And the hashes exist specifically in the proof of work schema. When we're talking about Food Trust Network, they use a proof of authority, I think it is, or something like that.
I can't remember.
I think they just have authorized members who are capable of adding transactions to the current block and closing the block or starting a new block at different times. So
exactly. So when we talk about hashes, really we're talking about proof of work blockchains, which, for example, Litecoin and Bitcoin are still two proof of work blockchains. Ethereum moved off of proof of work and went to proof of stake earlier in the year, and so everything's kind of changing. Business uses very, very different what they call consensus methods than do cryptocurrencies that are trying to secure their blockchain because they're public. Once you're private and have permissioned individuals joining the blockchain, and you can trust the person based on their login, you don't have to have nearly the kind of overhead that it takes on a Bitcoin network.
Now, we will be discussing consensus methods in the class in later weeks, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so consensus methods, all that kind of stuff. This is getting a little bit ahead of the subject for where we are in the class at this point,
Exactly.
but it'll come up.
It'll come up. Yep. All righty. I'm not seeing any more questions. So how about if we move on to the last subject of the day? Okay. Thanks, Craig, for letting me know that helped. Okay. By the way, if you haven't found this website,
Can we squish the margin a tiny bit?
squish. Oh, I can't.
Yeah.
Can't quite see the far left.
No.
And then the other things. Tell me where.
Tiny bit more. There. Nope. Yeah. That'll do it. Thank you.
Okay.
No, the other ones are fine because they had big margins.
Yeah. Okay. Very good. And I've got some sort of a block down here. Oh, there's the close thing on it. Come on, close. Wow, it's not closing. Okay, we can subscribe and turn off all ads. Okay, now I don't want to install that ad block. I've already got my own ad block, thanks. Okay, so CBDCs. I am going to be talking about CBDCs a lot, but it's going to be in my economics channel and not here. And part of the reason why is we talked about last week that with a CBDC, you don't know whether you're getting a blockchain or whether you're getting just whatever schema they want to do to promote and process transactions. The one CBDC that has been developed by the IMF, the International Monetary Fund. That was what I was trying to think of earlier. The one of the questions that I asked last time showed a coin with a unicorn on it. They have promoted their particular blockchain as an example of the kind of blockchain that you should have as your CBDC. The challenge is their consensus method gives total control to whatever government runs it to see every last transaction, no matter how small, no matter who it is, and the ability to close wallets anytime they want to. That is their paradigm. The International Monetary Fund wants to give governments total control over their finance system, who's spending what and where and how. So that is the piece that really scares me. Now, a lot of times what will happen is big countries like the United States are looking to other countries that are deploying CBDCs to see what worked, what didn't work, before we jump into it with basically the world's reserve currency, at least for a short time anyway, the world's reserve currency, and start monkeying with our finance system by deploying a CBDC. So they're looking at countries like the one on the screen, that is Nigeria in this case. And now most of the countries that are coming out of third world status in the continent of Africa are struggling with their finance systems. You hear a lot about their economies having a big challenge. And so Nigeria is one of those countries that has challenges with their monetary system. Now, the problem with the e-Naira, as far as I can tell, it was built on the Hyperledger Fabric blockchain. Now, Hyperledger Fabric is used by IBM. Okay, that is their trademark. Oracle uses a different one, for example, and Oracle is one of their main competitors. So I'll have to get for you the different one that they use, because it's just a different competitor type of blockchain. And so they built it on the Hyperledger Fabric, and they rolled it out, and for all intents and purposes it probably would have worked. The problem is they didn't consider the human nature factor that is involved. Number one, the Nigerians don't trust the central banking system, period. They have been through situations where one currency has been supplanted and made invalid, and all of a sudden they had to start all over with another currency, and all the money in their bank accounts were just wiped out. Okay, they've dealt with that kind of thing before. That's something was totally unheard of in the U.S. So they started rolling this out, and they wanted to do it slow and steady, and they wanted to make sure that people, were comfortable with it as they adopted. The problem is they never got comfortable with it, and they just couldn't deal with it. And so what they decided to do is they decided to fall back. And this graphic, I know it's a little bit fuzzy, but that's the best that I have here. The challenge was they didn't invalidate the prior currency because they wanted to roll it out slow. They accepted regular paper currency at the banks, but in order to withdraw a certain amount, they had to withdraw it in the new CBDC. So what happened was people wouldn't put their cash in the banks. They kept their cash at home. So there was significant hoarding of banknotes. Okay, over 80% of the circulation, currency in circulation, or CIC, are outside the banking system. People frankly just stopped depositing money in the banking system. And so it circulated, but businesses wouldn't deposit in the bank. So they'd do business and the money would just recirculate. They'd pay their suppliers in cash. They'd pay everybody in cash banknotes because nobody trusted the banks. So out of the 3.23 trillion in currency in circulation again, 2.7 trillion is outside the commercial banks held by the public. So when they say 80%, 2.7 trillion out of 3.23 is a significant number. So that is the hoarding problem they had. Okay? Because there was a significant hoarding problem, and because the banknotes weren't going through the central bank to validate that they were valid paper currency notes, it was easier to counterfeit. So all of a sudden the money supply ballooned because counterfeiters would never be caught. Counterfeiters could go spend the money, and they knew that it was never going to go through a central bank, and they were never going to be caught. So they had rampant inflation because money would continue to be manufactured in the local warehouse down the street with a nice printing press. Okay? So eventually, also because the banknotes weren't going through and being circulated, and the old dirty ones taken out of circulation and new ones being printed, it created a shortage of good, clean paper notes in circulation. So number 4 is, and you could hardly read this here, the redesign of the currencies were long overdue. They knew that. The N200 notes, the Naira 200 whatever notes, were in circulation over 20 years. The 500 notes were in circulation over 19 years, and the 1,000 notes were in circulation over 15 years without being recirculated and reprinted. Now, you'll notice that we don't let our banknotes get very old. It's hard to find an old banknote in circulation because the Federal Reserve has the banks take it in, the banks make their deposits in the Federal Reserve. It goes to a particular room in the Federal Reserve that they inspect each of the notes and throw away and actually burn the ones that do not meet the standard of being a circulatable note. So that happens repeatedly at all of the Federal Reserve outlets throughout the country. There's one in St. Louis, there's one in Kansas City, there's one in Seattle, New York. The Federal Reserve banks are, distributed throughout the country. And they're always taking in these notes, destroying a certain percentage of them, and then sending out new notes to replace the ones that they burn.
Reportedly, they burn billions of dollars worth every year.
Yeah.
To change it over.
Which means they print billions of dollars worth every year. So the printing presses are always running.
Right.
Okay. So it became a situation in Nigeria that there was just too high a cost of trying to manage all of that when they weren't being able to see it, they weren't being able to get the counterfeiters out, and so forth. So by December 2nd, they issued a letter to all banking institutions. This is their last-ditch attempt was in December, and then basically what they said is you can come to the bank and you can withdraw, but you're going to withdraw it as a central bank digital currency. So they had a cash withdrawal limit of $225 per week. I know I couldn't survive on $225 per week if I was using cash to do all my transactions. And then per week for individuals and $1,123 for businesses.
That's laughable. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, exactly. And so basically what this did is it drove it all underground.
Yeah.
If the bank won't give it back to me as a withdrawal so that I can use it, it's just not going to go in the bank. And that's what it basically backfired on them. And eventually they didn't work. So they eventually failed the project, and they're starting over or something. I'm not quite sure what they're gonna do now, but we can. What the U.S. is going to do, obviously, is try to learn from the mistakes that were done here and do it differently.
I know we don't have much time to go into it, but at some point we're going to be talking about El Salvador and their adoption of Bitcoin. But if you look at some of the efforts been going on down there, they have classes teaching people how to use Bitcoin. They have continual certifications for anybody who gets it. Businesses, they're providing businesses with placards put in their windows saying they accept Bitcoin. They are working very, very hard to make adoption of Bitcoin as easy as possible. It's still a struggle, but they're working very, very hard to establish that new currency. And because of the other changes that have been happening, their trust in their government to put this out is a little bit higher than what Nigeria appears to have.
Yeah, especially since the Bitcoin isn't already an established thing. It was already kind of established down there before they decided to adopt it as their official currency. So that helped a lot.
Absolutely.
And so they're doing the we're here to help side of the government.
What's that old quote? The scariest words in the English language.
Yeah,
I'm from
when
the
a federal
government.
official. I'm from the government. I'm here to help.
Yep. You have a great question here from Adam.
Okay, is this something that we should be concerned about now in the U.S.? Absolutely. I hear all the time about reducing the amount of currency you can withdraw. Absolutely. You're going to hear both. I was a little bit disturbed by an advertisement. It was one of those long-running advertisements where they don't tell you what it's about, but they tell you all the bad things that are going to happen if you don't watch their video and adopt their program. By the way, I didn't get all the way to the point of adopting their program because people aren't going to tell me what's going on. If it's not valuable enough for them to tell me right up front, then it's not worth my time. So, but he was basically saying that there's going to be a huge change in monetary policy by the end of the summer, that you're not going to want to have more than about $2,500 in a bank. And I don't know what that could be because they're not far along in their CBDCs. They've got a new payment system by the Federal Reserve. It's an interbank payment system, but they don't yet have any CBDC infrastructure. I'm sure they're working on coding and working on the things that they need for it, but it's nowhere close to testing it. So I'm going to be digging into that.
The next deadline is in July. The Fed will hit its next milestone. So we'll have some more information at that point, which might be during this class. When does the class end?
July 9th is the last Sunday.
Okay, well, we might have a great new update right at the very end of the class.
We might. We'll see. So
Okay.
It is 3 minutes till the top of the hour by my clock. So I'm going to go ahead and call the roll. If you could put that text out there. If you could just let me know that you're here again so I can take the roll easier and give everybody credit that's here. And hopefully you've enjoyed this one. I know we didn't play a game at the beginning. We'll do that like every other class. But we had some good, valuable things to talk about today. So, all right.
I think Craig's absolutely right. When it becomes centralized, that's when the problems begin.
Yep, because the Monetary Fund, the World Monetary Fund, the IMF, International Monetary Fund, the total control issue is all written in their document. So on my economics channel, I'm going to start talking about that and start revealing what the World Economic Forum and what the IMF are trying to push on all the countries out there. So. All right. Does this have to do with the decreasing value of the American dollar? Not directly. The decreasing value of the American dollar is simply the fact that we printed way too much. During COVID, they just flooded the markets with dollars, and so we've caused rampant inflation. And what's then happening is the confidence in the U.S. dollar is waning. And with BRICS now deciding that they're not going to use the dollar for international trade, we're going to have a lot of dollars floating out there that people don't want anymore, that they're just going to dump because they can use their own currency to buy oil or their own currency to trade with China or Russia or anybody else that they want to trade with that's within BRICS, BRICS.
Brazil, Russia, India, China.
And
right?
S stands for something, too.
More of them.
Yeah, more of them? Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
and we can thank the Ukrainian war for that. Basically, when we cut off Russia didn't want to use the U.S. dollar and prop us up while we were cutting them off. So they immediately said, "Okay, we'll take gold." And
So they based their currency on gold, and they're creating a new digital currency that's going to be in the BRICS zone, and they're going to cut us out rather than the reverse. So that has more to do with the decreasing value of the dollar than...
Yes. Can't have a universal currency that isn't universal.
That's true. Okay. Why don't you put the closing screen up?
Okay. Goodbye, everybody.
See you later.